All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hope. I have to retrieve Easter, which is one of my favorite days from this linkage to the IRS now. It needs a little help. Easter is one of my favorite days of the year, and last year at the Carpenter Center was awesome, so hopefully you'll be with us this year. I also want to tell you a really fun story this morning. So if you were here last week, you heard Cody Buchan, who spoke. And Cody just did a great job, and I regretted that I wasn't here to kind of hear him and support him, but I listened to it on the app, and I just thought Cody did a great job. I was helped by it. I was encouraged by it. He was funny. So if you were here, you remember in the beginning, he talked about how he's recently gotten engaged and how he and Megan just went on the outing to register in these different stores. And Cody said, yeah, I found out, for the guy, that's a Mirage. He said, there's only one scanner. Only one of us is scanning the items, and it wasn't me. But Cody told this great story, and he said at Crate & Barrel, there was this cool cheese cutter. And so he kind of talked about this cool cheese cutter and all that. Anyway, a really fun part of just the life of hope. So Wednesday morning, we had all our staff gathered for staff meeting and for devotion. And Jennifer Mitchell, who's on our administrative staff, said, Cody, did you see the box on the front desk? And he's like, what? She said, there's a Crate & Barrel box on the front desk. I'm like, no way, no way. She said, yeah, really, really. She said, I'll go get it. So she went and she got the Crate & Barrel box off the front desk. It was given anonymously. The person didn't identify themselves. Said, Cody, great job this weekend. I was really encouraged by your message. And congratulations on your wedding. And it was the cheese cutter, which is so fun. And it's anonymous. We're like, we don't know who did it. But if it was you, that's really, really fun. And so, hey, anyway, I thought also I would tell you that Elizabeth and I have an anniversary coming up. And we're thinking that we would register again. But this time it's at Orvis, which is good hunting and fishing stuff, and at Dick's Sporting Goods and other valid stores like that. Anyway, it's not real soon. It's in June 20th. Okay. So truly, though, whoever did that for Cody, that's really fun. I'm not even directly involved with it, but I get to enjoy it. And now, in a sense, we all get to enjoy it. So that's really fun. So we're closing out our series this weekend called Mirage. And if you've been here, I think you kind of get the idea. A mirage is something that appears to be promising when it's off in the distance, but when we actually get to it, it doesn't turn out to be what we thought it was. And today we're going to talk about the mirage of money and the way that money can do this. So you probably know about a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. Rick Warren, pastor of Saddleback Church, wrote this book. It's sold something like 50 million copies now. It's been translated, I think, in 56 different languages. I mean, if a book does that, it is obvious that he has touched on something that really resonates with people. Really resonates with people. And why would a book called The Purpose-Driven Life really resonate? Sell 50 million copies? I think it's because we live with a struggle that our lives may feel that they don't have purpose. And we kind of feel like we're going through the motions and we're going through the years, and the years are starting to add up, and we're beginning to feel like, is there really any purpose? Clearly, people are feeling that. So when he writes a book called The Purpose-Driven Life, people are really responding to it. So when we come to this question of money, one of the things that I think we'll discover, one of the clearest ways to clarify the purpose of our lives is with our money. Who thought that money could have such a spiritual application? So in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon, in all his splendor, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? Oh, you have little faith. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans, that's people who don't believe God, don't believe in God. The pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. One of the funnest parts about life around Hope and what God's doing is that people are here all over the line, all along the line of faith. There are people who are here and they're kind of curious, maybe, not sure I like this whole Jesus church thing, and they're just trying to figure it out, asking honest questions, which is so fun. There are other people who are just brand new in beginning this relationship of saying yes to Jesus as Lord of their life. There are other people who are further down the line. But one of the things that I think I've discovered in my own life as I talk with other people, I think it's true for many of us, the final frontier, the final territory of conversion is our money. It's like that part that we hold out longest. If our heart, our soul, is this place where we've asked Jesus to be Lord, to bring us life, it's like money is that last bit of landscape that we hold out. It's the final frontier in many respects of conversion. Makes me think of like my middle school, history books when you're learning about westward expansion in American history, and you're learning about things like, the gold rush and land rushes and all this kind of stuff. And you're kind of learning about final bits of land that are like the last frontier. And I think for us, in terms of inviting Jesus Christ to be Lord of our lives, money, it's like the last bit of territory. It's kind of the final frontier of conversion. So one of the things that is a mirage about money, and it's such a theme strongly stated by Jesus in the last verse, Jesus says, but seek first God's kingdom. Okay, in other words, make God the core focal priority of your life. Do that, and watch how all these other things begin to take their place. But what he's trying to do is expose a mirage that almost all of us live with. Almost all of us live with this idea, which is, when I get my ducks in a row, when things begin to fall into place financially, when I get this thing solved, this thing resolved, then I'll begin to try to be intentional about money. And what Jesus is saying is, it's backward. It won't happen. We keep thinking, if I had a little more, then. If I could just get these things concluded and wrapped up, then. It's a little bit like the couple that are like seriously dating, and they've been like seriously dating for a couple years, and they're like, if things could just get crystal clear, then we'd commit and get married. But the irony is, what Jesus is saying is, actually the other way around is usually how life works. You commit, and then things begin to get clear. And he's saying the same thing when it comes to money and to our priorities and to our lives. We think if things just fall in place, then I can make this priority clear. And what Jesus is saying is, no. make the priority clear, and then begin to see how these other things begin to fall into place. So Jesus is teaching about mirages. He's teaching about false things about money. And the first point that he makes is, no one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. What he's saying is, the human soul cannot have two highest devotions. It's as though he's just teaching us like the theological math of the wiring of our souls. Our souls can't do it. They can't pull it off. For whatever reason, however God's made us, they can't pull it off. You can't have two highest things. And I think we kind of know with the word that's a superlative, you can't have two highest things. What Jesus is saying is one of them will be highest. And what he's saying is, we have these hearts that desire God, but we have these hearts that are so susceptible to getting caught up in money and how money shapes our lives. So we kind of feel like, well, we're going to sing that Jesus is Lord, priority one of our lives. But then if we looked at our money and how we spend, how we manage our money, how much time and energy we pay attention to our money, we might begin to almost be able to diagnose, wow, if I step back and observe, I sing that Jesus is Lord of my life. But when I observe how much time and energy money has in my life, when I observe how much I have shaped my life around the acquisition of money, around the preservation of money, around a lifestyle that will be created, driven by money, when I begin to step back and look at that, I might begin to realize, you know what? Money is the Lord of my life. Money's the Lord of my life. So Jesus says, our souls can't do that. And I think it's because God made our souls for him, which means they were made to be in a unity with him. All kinds of theology behind that. But our souls were made to live in a wholeness and a unity with him. And so they can't do this fragmented thing with multiple primary devotions. But we live in a confusing world, and our culture talks all about money and material stuff. And so it's as though our souls are asking us, please shape a life for me, a life of wholeness where God and his kingdom are the central devotion of life. It's like our souls are saying that to us, but we live understandably drawn and distracted and taken in lots of different devotions. And it's like our souls are protesting. It's like our souls are kind of saying, this fragmented thing isn't working for me. I feel frustrated, confused. And many of us could say like, okay, yeah, I sort of get that. So we all know this. We talk about this at Hope a lot. If we're going to really find help and really find healing, well, then if Jesus is spiritually guiding us, what we got to have for the starting point of healing and help is an accurate diagnosis, is an accurate assessment of what's really going on. So it's challenging for us, but I think for many of us, the accurate diagnosis is to start by saying, yes, money is the Lord of my life. Okay, now, before you run to get upset, nobody's trying to make anybody feel bad. Jesus is teaching here. It's all about giving us freedom in life that our souls were made for and they're hungry for. You've heard me say this many times, but I don't know that I could say it enough. I've never seen Jesus in the Gospels moralizing, walking around shaking his finger at people. But I always see him teaching truth for the purpose of setting us free and helping us find the life our souls were made for. So if we start and say, okay, money is the Lord of my life. In other words, our lives are shaped primarily around that. And yes, I desire God. I sing that Jesus is Lord of my life. But if I look closely at the way my life is actually arranged, I might begin to say, you know what? If I want to begin to be honest on the journey and find the life and the healing that Jesus offers, I may need to say, if I look at money and how it's positioned in my life, actually money is Lord of my life. Okay, fair enough. A little diagnostic that Jesus gives us is in Matthew 6:21. Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. In other words, your heart follows your treasure, not the other way around. We read that, we're like, what? I don't get it. It's true. He's just giving us a diagnostic. This is not a teaching point, it's a diagnostic. He's just saying, if you want to understand how it works, this is how it works. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. So what he's trying to say to us is, if we want this life of wholeness, where the kingdom of God is the center of our lives, then place our treasures there and watch our hearts begin to follow suit. So this life that we feel that we want, of wholeness and souls being unified with God at the center, which will give us a deep sense of purpose, which will give us a sense of unity at the soul level, less fragmentation, less aiming at nothing and hitting it. He's saying, well then, place your treasure where you want your heart to be. It's very helpful teaching to me. It's like a diagnostic. So if we begin by saying, okay, all right, it's hard, but let's be honest, my treasure is money. Then the question is, my heart will be there. But if my treasure is God, then I want to place my treasure in God and watch my heart follow suit. So question number one, if we come to this with an accurate, honest assessment, if we said, okay, yes, it's true, money is the central core, the highest purpose, the highest focus of my life. Question number one is that what I want? Is that what I want my life to look like? Now, here we get into wrestling and the challenge of the real growth, right? You all know this, but I hate religious superficialities and mamby-pamby garbage where everybody says what they know they're supposed to say. Let's talk really about it, okay? If this is a challenge, and my question is, do I want money to be the Lord, the highest devotion of my life? Let's be really honest. If we're really honest, everybody's supposed to say, no, I don't. But forget the superficialities. What's the really honest answer? Growth will only come with that honesty. And if we want the growth, it may be that we need to start by saying, yes, I want money to be the Lord of my life. There was a time in my life where I absolutely would have said that. And then we have to ask, if we're really growing and praying and talking to God, God, what's driving that? Why do I want that? Why do I shape my life that way? Am I fearful? Am I insecure? Why am I fearful? Why insecure? Where do I find my identity and my purpose? And where, Lord, would my life begin to look like the life my soul is so hungry for? So question number one in the journey is, do I want money to be Lord of my life? And you know what? If you would say my honest answer is yes, I would say to you, good for you for being honest. Because that's where growth happens. So Jesus is saying that if we want God, however, God's kingdom, that is God's character, God's heart, God's priorities, God's desires, if we want God's kingdom to be the core of our lives, then we intentionally seek it. And one of the most intentional ways we do that is by apprehending our money and lining it up accordingly, by making our kingdom first. And our souls are hungry for this. Our souls are hungry for this life of purpose and unity and wholeness. Over the years of ministry life, I've never had someone come to me and say, David, can you help me out? I've got a spiritual challenge. I say, what? I've never had someone say, my soul is hungry for dabbling. I want to dabble in my soul. And my soul is hungry for aiming at nothing. Can you help me aim at nothing? I've never had anybody say that, and I know that I don't feel that. What I know is my soul is hungry for a life that is full of God, full of His character, His beauty, His purpose. I'd like to live a life where I feel like I'm making a difference, and where my life then is shaped so my soul comes alive in that unity of wholeness with God at the center. So one of our challenges is all of us have shaped our lives around a primary Lord. And it's really helpful to ask the honest question, what is that primary Lord? Not what are you supposed to say, what is actually true. Now, some of us have intentionally done it, and some of us would realize, well, I can see that I've got a primary Lord, but I never intentionally tried to get there. That's the classic, if we aim at nothing, we hit it, and we've got something driving our lives which we didn't necessarily want to be driving our lives. and our souls are hungry for this life of wholeness and purpose and meaning. In Isaiah 55, it says, "Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and your soul will delight in the richest of fare." Your soul will start coming to life in ways that you feel more alive than you've ever felt before. But it's not easy for us to do that. So many messages, so many enticements. It's so easy for us to apply our devotion so that we just keep feeding our souls junk food. And we wonder why we keep having this hunger inside of us. So here are a couple more mirages we need to talk about. The first one is the mirage of more. Many of us think, if I had more, then I would begin to do something more significant. Then I would begin to use my money to shape it around God being first in my life. I just need more, right? But here's a really interesting challenge to that. Almost every one of us in the room, today, March 23rd, almost every one of us, not every one of us because the economy's been hard, but almost every one of us have more today than we've ever had. Well, then we have more. Well, then how much do we need? A little more than that. And you see how the more is a mirage. It's a moving finish line. So we get a little more, we do a little more, we stretch ourselves more, and you see how it becomes a mirage. It's the mirage of more. And this whole money thing, it's so easy for our souls to get wrapped up in it. And it can happen early on in life. So this book I've been telling you about by John Ortberg and Dallas Willard, John Ortberg is telling this story about a summer evening when he gets home from work, and it's a beautiful summer evening, and his daughter's like 6 years old, and she's just learning how to ride her bike and be able to do it on her own, but she's not really steady yet. So he gets home from work, and John has this big, giant heart, kind of like Pete, this big, beautiful heart. And he's loving this moment. He's out with his daughter, and she's on her bike, she's pedaling on her bike, and he's holding behind her, and they're kind of going down the street, and they're just having this father and daughter time, both of them looking straight ahead. So then his daughter looks and notices he has a Band-Aid on his arm. And she says, "Daddy, why do you have a Band-Aid? Did you hurt yourself?" Well, he had a Band-Aid because earlier that morning he had a blood test done for a life insurance policy. So now he's got this moment, which is like, do I tell her about the Band-Aid, the life insurance, and the whole bit? She's 6 years old. But he's sort of feeling the love, so he decides to tell her. So he says to her, "Well, sweetheart, Daddy loves you and Mommy very much. And Daddy wants to make sure that if anything ever happened to Daddy, that you and Mommy would be taken care of." Right? So she's pedaling. She says, "Daddy, what do you mean if anything ever happened to Daddy?" So he's in now, right? He's got to explain the whole deal. So he says to her, "Well, sweetheart, Daddy loves you and Mommy very much. And so what this means is if Daddy dies, a company will give you and Mommy $200,000. And for the first time, she turns and looks at him and she goes, "Each?" Okay, so there goes John's love-in moment, right? We're having this beautiful time. And this girl, right? She's like 6 years old. First time they have eye contact is when she goes, "Each?" The second mirage on this is the mirage of mind. The mirage of mind. Years ago, a friend of mine told me about a time he was in the car with his boys, and they were driving and they saw a McDonald's coming up on the left. And the boys are like, Dad, can we stop and get some fries? You know, a snack and McDonald's fries and the whole bit. So the dad's like, "Okay, fine." So the boys are in the back seat and they pull up to the drive-through window and the dad orders 2 big orders of fries. Takes his money out of his wallet, he pays for them, and he hands the fries to the boys. And right after he hands them, he says, "Hey, can I have a couple?" And they say, "Get your own, these are ours." Okay, now, wait, what? Those are yours? No, boys, actually, you're eating my fries. But you see how the mirage of mind comes in so fast. So fast. It's like your high schooler who gets allowance from you. And then the high schooler goes and spends some money and they say, "I bought it with my own money." Well, I mean, you did give it, and that is a sense, but how quickly we forget the source of what we're calling my own money, right? So this story I told years ago but it's so meaningful to me because it's so easy to get wrapped up in this, right? Remember we talked a few weeks ago about how the two words that we learn first in life, no and mine. And these are kingdom words. These are like the first two words we say as little kids, and they're our way of beginning to define our kingdom, right? So I told this story a couple years ago, but I felt like through this experience, God taught me more in one spontaneous moment about how the money thing works. I want to share it again. So our daughter Laura went to the University of South Carolina. So years ago when I was down there visiting with her on a visit, she says, Dad, can we go to Earth Fair, which is like this earthy grocery store on Divine Street. What she meant was, Dad, will you stock my refrigerator at Earth Fair? But what she said was, can we go to Earth Fair? So we go to Earth Fair, and as we're walking in, there's this guy sitting by the entrance, and he's playing the violin. And he plays beautifully. And I listened for a moment, and Laura's like, Dad, come on, come on. I'm like, no, honey, I want to listen. So I'm standing there listening, and I look at the guy, and it looks like he's got a little road wear. He looks a little worn. And I'm thinking, what is the story of your life? You play like you should be in Carnegie Hall, and you're here in front of the grocery store. So he has his violin case open, and Laura's like, come on, Dad, come on. I'm like, I just want to listen for a minute. So we listened for a minute. I put a few bucks in the violin case. We went in. We come out, and Laura's like, let's go home and, take the mother load of food home. And I'm like, no, I want to listen for a minute. She's like, Dad. Okay, so next time I go down and visit, I said to her, let's go to Earth Fair. She's like, awesome, Dad. You want to buy some stuff? I said, no, I want to hear the violin play. So we went, and there he was again playing the violin. Awesome. The stuff he played, his countenance, his personality. I could just sit there and listen to him for 30 minutes if Laura didn't say, come on, Dad, we need to go to the store. So like every visit, then thereafter, listen and listen to God. And one day I said to him, I just really like what you play. And there's something about what you're playing, what you're choosing to play, your countenance. I just said, I really like it. I put a few bucks in this violin case. He says, thanks, you know what? So in we go to the store. So Christmas time a couple of years ago, it's like December 10th, and I get this text, and it's a video from Laura. And she says, Dad, I know how much you love Christmas, so here's a little early Christmas present. So she sent me like a 30-second video standing in front of the violin player, videoing him. He's playing great music. It's Christmas time. So she says, Dad, here's a little early Christmas present for you. I'm telling you, it's a little deal, but it meant a lot to me. So I listened to it, and I'm like, that's my favorite guy. So I text Laura back, and I said, Laura, it's Christmas. Put a bunch of money in his violin case. Put a lot of money in there. So this is what I get from Laura. How much money? Question mark. So I said, 50 bucks. So she texts me back, I don't have 50 bucks. Okay? So I'm thinking about this for a minute. So then I said, okay, I will transfer 50 bucks into your account. You go to an ATM and come back and give him the 50 bucks. So she texts me, she says, but it won't be my money. So I said, it will be our money. And guess what? He's going to think it's your money. And he's going to say, wow, you are so nice and so terrific. Thank you so much. So you're going to get the credit. He doesn't have to know that I transfer the money into your account. You're going to get the credit and the enjoyment of giving him the money. He's going to get the encouragement of a nice bit of money at Christmas time. I'm going to get the enjoyment of knowing that he gets the encouragement, that you got the joy of giving it, that he's giving you the credit for giving it, and I get the joy of the multiple levels of partnership. Now, the reason I'm telling you this in such detail was, as this whole thing unfolded, I felt like God gave me a living picture of how this money thing works with him. Now, I've never gotten a text from God that says, I will transfer money into your account. But many of you, we all have lived enough life. There are times where money comes along. But don't even make it the special times. How about just your normal daily income? And all of a sudden, they're like, okay, wait, it's our money. God's giving it. And we get to give it to places that have his heart He gets the delight of knowing that it's given to places that have his heart, that the person's encouraged, that the giver's encouraged, that the receiver is giving credit to the giver, that he gets the joy of all the multiple layers. And I thought, God, thank you. I think I just have seen this illustration. It's so helpful. Okay. So the question then is, all right, how do I do it? How do I make progress in this area? So we talked about 5 P's at Hope, but it begins with the biblical idea of tithing. Malachi 3:10, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I'll not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have enough room for it. Okay, now when you read the word blessing, do not interpret that this is the ROI on your investment, that this is an investment strategy. If I give 10%, God will bless me with 20%. Wow, this is a good deal. I like this gig. The blessing he's talking about is a life where your soul is starting to come alive in him. Because your life is starting to be unified around him at the center. Because our lives are beginning to make a difference. Because we're beginning to feel that we are really making a difference and we have value. And our souls are finding this wholeness of unity around him at the center of our lives. So we talked about 5 P's a while back, and I just want to remind them to you, because if you're like, okay, how do I begin to try to do this? First one is plan. You have to create a plan. It won't happen by itself. If you aim at nothing, you hit it. And many of us are in aim at nothing and I'm hitting it. You got to create a plan. You got to sit down and make a plan. Next one is be purposeful. Start thinking purposefully. If God is the Lord and the joy of my life, then where do I want to send my money that acknowledges God as the Lord and the joy of my life? Third one is prioritize. Give first. Don't give from leftovers. Many of us think, I'm going to use my money, and if I have some left over, I'll give it. And we know how that goes. We never have the leftover, or it's just teeny tiny nothing. The next one is percentage. Set a percentage goal, seeking 10%. Now, we know this. Almost none of us give 10%. But this is what God has invited our hearts to if we want to know freedom, purpose, wholeness, and so on. So set a percentage, even if it's 1%, and that's your starting point. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 2.5. Set a percentage goal. And then the last one is progression. Make a plan so that you are increasing your percentage over the years. So Jesus said, seek first his kingdom, and all these other things in life will begin to fall into place. This is about the freedom, the generosity, the purpose, the clarity that our souls are hungry for. But here's what I know as we wrap up. This is a challenge. Many of us hear it, but few of us believe it. So over time, we identified and asked a couple people who have really navigated this territory and said, I really want to try to make some headway in this. So we're going to close with Nicole letting you meet Doug Hudgens and hear a bit about his story before our last worship song.
So I think we can all admit that this is challenging for all of us, and we know that change is hard. And to change anything in our lives takes a little bit of effort and intentionality. And so really, Doug and I thought we would start with a conversation and invite you guys to be in it with us so that you can leave here and have conversations with your family, your friends about this issue. So to tell us a little bit, we're going to talk about kind of before and after. So about 2 years ago, you found yourself in a situation. Please tell us a little bit about that.
So I was looking at changing my career, and with that came the idea of having to leave the current job I was in and going to school. So as excited as I was about that, it also, the reality of my finances kind of came into it. So we had, me and my wife, we had debt. So we had to really look at how are we going to navigate through this debt and lose an income and go back to school and pay for all that. So at times that seemed nearly impossible. It seemed like we're just never going to make this headway. We're not going to get to our goals because we're letting money hold us back. So yeah, it was just really tough to kind of get from point A to point B.
So you felt like you were being called to something new, yet there was like a reality of the way that you guys were living with money that made it impossible. And you said impossible. Earlier he said tough, but we decided to amp it up to impossible because that was really how it felt. So okay, so you guys were there, you and Ashley, and then what did you do next? What happened next?
So just between wanting to meet our goals and also we took Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University here at Hope, and we got a whole lot out of that. Would highly recommend that. And that gave us the tools necessary to really just start attacking our debt and just being real intentional about what we were doing with our money, where we were spending it and how we were able to kind of, get ourselves out of debt. And as of now, we are out of debt and able to pay for our school. And it's been an amazing journey.
So you said that Ashley's in school too, right?
Yeah, she's.
Yeah, and these guys paid off their debt in 6 months. So, you came from a position where you thought there's no money, there's no money here, there's no way to make a change, and yet with a few very intentional efforts, you've made a huge change. So, I think there's probably a lot of us who can relate and feel like, gosh, I feel that. I feel like I'm in a tough situation. I don't know how to get out of it. So, for those out here who feel that way, what would you like to say to them?
Well, first of all, I would say try not to get too bogged down with the idea of the debt you might have to crawl out of. It's doable, trust me. And then also, I would also, 3 words that kind of come to my mind when looking at money going forward: secondary, God should be first, and then I also think intentionality. Be intentional on what you do with your money. We used to be very free spenders. Now we do a monthly budget. We actually enjoy doing that because we know where our money's going. It's a nice feeling. It's a freedom. And then lastly, money's a gift. It's a gift from God. It is. Personally, I used to have entitlement and arrogance with my money. I used to think, well, it's mine. I'm going to do what I want with it, and it doesn't really get you anywhere. So I think kind of relinquishing control a little bit, I think helps.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. Well, we know that this takes a lot of work. It's not easy. So as we close today, we're going to sing a worship song together because we have to invite God to change our hearts. It's the only way we really experience real change. So if you guys would go ahead and stand up, and we'll sing our last song together.